Commander Rovell stood at the broken window of his command bunker and watched the sky burn. The Morak warships hung above the planet like dark clouds, blocking the light of the twin suns. There were so many ships that Rovell had stopped counting after 100. It did not matter anymore. 1 ship or 1,000 ships, the result would be the same. His army was finished. The bunker shook as another explosion hit somewhere nearby. Dust fell from the ceiling and covered everything in gray powder. Rovell did not move. He had stopped flinching at explosions 3 days ago when the siege began. Now, he simply waited for the one that would finally kill him. Behind him, his communications officer spoke in a tired voice. "Commander, High Command is responding to our distress signal." Rovell turned slowly. His body ached from exhaustion and from the wounds he had taken in yesterday's battle. What did they say? The officer's face told him the answer before the words came. "Reinforcements cannot reach us for another 40 cycles. The Morak have blocked all approach routes. We are—" The officer paused and swallowed hard. "We are on our own, sir." Rovell nodded. He had expected this. Hope was a luxury that soldiers could not afford in times like these. He walked to the tactical display and looked at the map of their situation. Red markers surrounded their position from all sides. Each marker represented a Morak battalion. There were 37 battalions closing in on them. His own forces were marked in blue. There were very few blue markers left. "How many soldiers do we have remaining?" Rovell asked, though he already knew the answer. 783, Commander. Down from 12,000 at the start of the battle. 783 soldiers against 37 battalions. Rovell closed his eyes and let the numbers sink in. Each of those soldiers had families waiting for them on their homeworld. Mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, children who would never see their parents again. He opened his eyes and straightened his back. If they were going to die, they would die with honor. "Prepare the troops for a final defense," he ordered. "We will hold this position until the end." In the medical tent behind the bunker, Medic Thala worked without rest. Her hands moved quickly as she wrapped bandages around a soldier's burned arm. The soldier was young, barely old enough to fight. His eyes were empty and stared at nothing. "You will be fine," Thala told him softly. "The burn is not deep." The soldier did not respond. Thala understood. She had seen this look many times in the past 3 days. It was the look of someone who had already accepted death. She finished the bandage and moved to the next patient. And the next. And the next. There were too many wounded and not enough medicine. She had been using torn uniforms as bandages for the last day. The medical supplies had run out long ago. Around her, soldiers lay on the ground in rows. Some moaned in pain. Others were silent, too weak to make any sound. A few whispered prayers to the gods of their homeworld, asking for a quick death or a miracle. Thala did not know which was more likely done. She stopped beside an old soldier with gray fur and tired eyes. He was a veteran of many battles. Now he lay with a hole in his chest that Thala could not fix. "Is it bad?" the old soldier asked. Thala hesitated. She had never been good at lying. "Yes," she admitted. "I am sorry." The old soldier smiled weakly. "Do not be sorry, young one. I have lived a long life. I have seen much. It is a good time to rest." He reached out and took her hand. "Save your medicine for the young ones. They deserve more time than I do." Thala felt tears in her eyes. She squeezed his hand and nodded. Then she moved on, because there was nothing else she could do. Outside the medical tent, the ground shook with approaching footsteps. Morak ground troops were advancing. Their heavy boots made the earth tremble. Their war horns sounded in the distance, a deep and terrible noise that made hearts beat faster with fear. Commander Rovell gathered his officers in the bunker. Their faces were tired and dirty. Their uniforms were torn, but they stood straight and waited for orders. "The Morak will attack within the hour," Rovell said. "We cannot win this fight, but we can make them pay for every step they take. We can show them that the Kashin do not surrender. We can give our people a story to remember." He looked at each of his officers. "Are you with me?" One by one, they saluted. No one spoke. No words were needed. Rovell was about to give his final orders when the communications officer suddenly sat up straight. Her eyes went wide with surprise. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission on all channels." Rovell frowned. "From High Command?" "No, sir. It is, The officer looked confused. "It is from a human ship." The room went silent. Rovell felt his heart skip a beat. Humans? There were no human ships in this sector. Humans were new to the galaxy. They were traders and diplomats, not warriors. What were they doing here? "Put it through," Rovell ordered. Static filled the bunker. Then a voice came through, clear and calm. It spoke an accented galactic common with a strange rhythm that Rovell had never heard before. "Kashin forces, this is Captain Taiho of Earth's 77th Orbital Drop Division. Hold your positions. We are inbound. Estimated arrival time, 6 minutes." The transmission ended. Silence returned to the bunker. Rovell stared at the communications console. His mind struggled to understand what he had just heard. A human drop division? Coming here? That was impossible. The Morak blockade covered the entire planet. No ship could break through. And orbital drops without carrier support were suicide. No species was crazy enough to try such a thing. "Commander?" one of his officers asked. "What do we do?" Rovell did not answer immediately. He walked to the broken window and looked up at the sky, at the massive Morak warships that blocked everything from view. If the humans were really coming, they would have to fall through that wall of death. "We hold our position," Rovell finally said. "We wait and see if the humans are as mad as they sound." In the medical tent, Thela heard the transmission too. She stopped her work and looked at the soldiers around her. For the first time in 3 days, she saw something other than despair in their eyes. She saw confusion. And beneath the confusion, she saw something that scared her. She saw hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope could break you worse than any weapon. Thela had seen too many soldiers die with hope in their eyes, waiting for help that never came. But as she looked up at the burning sky, she found herself hoping too. She did not know why. She did not know anything about humans. She only knew that someone, somewhere, had heard their cries for help, and someone was coming. 6 minutes, the human had said. In 6 minutes, they would know if the transmission was real or just a cruel trick. In 6 minutes, everything might change, or everything might stay the same, and they would all die together. Thela returned to her work. She wrapped another bandage. She whispered another prayer. And she waited, like everyone else, for the sky to open. The transmission from the human captain spread through the Kashin camp like fire through dry grass. Soldiers whispered to each other. Officers exchanged confused looks. Everyone had the same question on their lips. Who were these humans, and why were they coming? Commander Rovell stood with his senior officers in the bunker. The tactical display still showed red markers everywhere, but now there was something new. A small cluster of blue dots appeared at the edge of the screen, high above the planet, falling fast. "That cannot be right," one officer said. "Those objects are too small to be ships. They are the size of escape pods." "They are escape pods," another officer replied. "Or something similar. Our sensors show no engines, no shields. Just metal containers falling through the atmosphere." Rovell stared at the display. "With humans inside?" "Yes, Commander. Life signs confirmed. Approximately 300 humans, falling at terminal velocity toward our position. The room went quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. Terminal velocity. No shields. No engines. The humans were falling like stones dropped from a great height. When they hit the ground, they would be nothing but broken bodies and twisted metal. "They are committing suicide," an officer whispered. "Why would they do this?" Rovell did not answer. He was thinking about the stories he had heard about humans. Strange stories that he had always dismissed as exaggeration. Tales told by traders and travelers who had visited Earth or met humans in distant spaceports thought they called Earth a death world. A planet where everything tried to kill you. The weather could freeze you or burn you. The ground could shake and swallow entire cities. The water was filled with creatures that had teeth sharper than knives. Even the smallest insects carried poisons that could stop a heart, and the humans had survived all of it. They had not just survived. They had conquered their planet. They had climbed to the top of their food chain, not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they simply refused to die. Rovell remembered another story. A trader had told him about something called persistence hunting. On Earth, humans would chase their prey for hours and hours. They could not run as fast as their prey, but they did not need to. They would simply follow, walking and jogging, never stopping. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion, and the human would still be there, still moving, still coming down at the time. Rovell had laughed at this story. What kind of predator could not catch its prey? It seemed absurd. Embarrassing, even. Now, as he watched human soldiers fall from the sky without ships or shields, he was not laughing anymore. In the medical tent, Thela was checking on a wounded soldier when she heard the others talking about humans. She paused and listened. "I heard they do not need sleep for many days," one soldier said. "They can stay awake and fight for cycles without rest." "That is nothing," another replied. "I heard they can regrow lost body parts. Not like us, where we need machines and medicine. They do it naturally. Bones break and heal. Skin tears and grows back. Their bodies repair themselves." The first soldier shook his head in disbelief. "That sounds like monster stories. Stories to scare children." Thela spoke up without thinking. "It is true." Both soldiers turned to look at her. She felt her face grow warm, but she continued. "I met a human once, at a medical conference on the trade station Velker. A human doctor. She was kind and intelligent. We talked for many hours about healing practices, and?" the first soldier asked. "What did she say?" Thela remembered the conversation clearly. It had disturbed her deeply. "She told me about human children, how they break their bones playing, how they fall from trees and hit their heads, and they heal, without medicine, without machines. Their bodies simply fix themselves over time." The soldiers stared at her in silence. "She showed me scars on her arms," Thela continued. "Old wounds from her childhood. Cuts and burns that had healed naturally. She treated them like nothing special. But to me," Thela shook her head, "to me it was terrifying. What kind of species evolves to survive such constant damage?" Before anyone could respond, the ground shook with a massive explosion. The sound was different from the Morak weapons. It was sharper, closer. It came from above. Everyone looked up. Meanwhile, aboard the Morak command vessel, Warlord Drek received reports that confused him. His sensors showed small objects entering the atmosphere at high speed. His officers told him they were falling too fast to be ships and too slow to be weapons. "What are they?" Drek demanded. He was a large creature, covered in thick armor-like scales. His eyes glowed red in the dim light of the command bridge. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had never lost a battle. He did not intend to start now. "Unknown warlord," an officer replied. They appear to be metal containers of some kind, possibly debris from a destroyed vessel, possibly escape pods from a ship that never arrived. Drek made a sound of disgust. Ignore them. Focus on the ground assault. I want the Kashan commander's head before the sun set. Yes, Warlord. The Morak officers returned to their work. None of them paid attention to the falling objects. They were too small to matter. They were not a threat. They were nothing. High above the planet, inside one of those falling metal containers, Captain Taiho checked his equipment for the final time. His drop pod shook violently as it tore through the atmosphere. The heat outside was incredible. The metal walls glowed orange from friction. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Taiho was calm. He had done this before. Many times. The first drop was always the worst. After that, you learn to trust the pod. You learn to trust your training. You learn to trust your team. Around him, 300 soldiers fell through the fire, each one alone in their own pod, each one carrying enough weapons and supplies to fight for days, each one ready to die for strangers they had never met. Lieutenant Yuna's voice came through his helmet radio. She was in a pod somewhere nearby, falling at the same speed. Captain, sensors show heavy enemy presence at the landing zone. Thousands of hostiles. Armor and air support. Taiho checked his own sensors. She was right. The numbers were not good. 300 humans against thousands of Morak soldiers. Standard military thinking would call this impossible. Standard military thinking would call this suicide. But Taiho was not a standard soldier. None of them were. They had volunteered for this mission knowing the odds. They had volunteered because the Kesha needed help and no one else was coming. Understood, Taiho replied. Stick to the plan. Fast landing. Fast deployment. Fast movement. Do not let them surround us. We surround them. Yes, Captain. He could hear the smile in Yuna's voice. She loved impossible odds. She always said they made victory taste sweeter. Sergeant Minho's voice joined the channel. He was the heavy weapons expert, a quiet man who let his guns do the talking. All weapons are ready. Just point me at the bad ones. Corporal Hana, the medic, spoke next. Medical supplies are secured. I hope I will not need them. Finally, Private Jiho, the youngest member of the team, asked a question. Captain, I have never fought aliens before. Are they different from human enemies? Taiho thought about the question. He had fought Morak forces twice before. He remembered how confident they were, how certain of victory. He remembered how that confidence had turned to fear when they realized humans did not break. Humans did not run. Humans kept coming, no matter what. They are different, Taiho answered. They expect enemies to give up when things look bad. They expect fear and despair. They are not ready for us. What should I do, Captain? Taiho smiled inside his helmet. Just fight like a human, Private. That will be enough. The drop pods broke through the clouds. Below them, the battlefield came into view. Smoke and fire covered the ground. Morak forces moved like dark waves toward the Kisham position. Explosions lit up the landscape. In his bunker, Commander Roval saw the drop pods appear. They looked like falling stars, bright and fast. They did not slow down as they should. They did not spread out to avoid enemy fire. They fell straight and true, aimed directly at the space between his soldiers and the Morak army. They are going to crash, one of his officers said. No one can survive that landing. Roval watched in silence. His heart beat faster. He wanted to believe. He needed to believe. But years of war had taught him that hope was cruel. Hope made the pain worse when it died. The first pods hit the ground. The impact was tremendous. Dust and debris flew into the air. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the pods opened. and humans stepped out. The drop pods hit the ground with the sound of thunder. Dust clouds rose into the air, covering the battlefield in brown fog. The Morak soldiers stopped their advance. They had never seen anything like this. Small metal containers, falling from the sky without ships, crashing into the earth at killing speed. No sane species would do this. No living creature could survive such an impact. Then the pods cracked open. Captain Taiho stepped out of his pod and onto alien soil. His armor was scorched from the atmospheric entry. Heat still rose from the metal plates on his shoulders. His lungs burned from the rough landing. His bones ached from the impact. He smiled. Around him, other pods opened. Human soldiers emerged one by one, checking their weapons and forming into groups. Some stumbled at first, their bodies adjusting to the gravity of this new world. But within seconds, they were steady. Within seconds, they were ready. Lieutenant Yuna appeared at Taiho's side. Her rifle was already in her hands. Landing successful. 300 soldiers deployed. 0 casualties. Taiho looked at the Morak army in front of them. Thousands of alien soldiers stood frozen in confusion. Their massive bodies were covered in dark armor. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Behind them, armored vehicles rumbled and roared. Above them, attack craft circled like hungry birds. "They look scared," Yuna observed. "They are not scared yet," Taiho replied. "But they will be." He raised his voice so all the soldiers could hear. 77th Orbital Drop Division. Form up. Standard assault formation. Show these aliens what Earth sends. The humans moved with perfect coordination. They spread out into small teams of 5 or 6 soldiers each. They took positions behind broken rocks and destroyed vehicles. They aimed their weapons at the enemy and waited for the order. Sergeant Minho set up his heavy gun behind a pile of debris. The weapon was massive, designed to destroy vehicles and buildings. It took most species 2 or 3 soldiers to operate such a weapon. Minho handled it alone. Corporal Hannah stayed close to the front lines, her medical bag ready on her back. She would be needed soon. She always was. Private Jiho found a position next to more experienced soldiers. His hand shook slightly as he held his rifle. He had trained for years for this moment. He had practiced and prepared. But nothing could truly prepare you for your first real battle. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. The Morak army recovered from their surprise. Officers shouted orders in their harsh language. Soldiers raised their weapons. The massive war machines began to move forward again. A Morak commander stepped to the front of the army. He was larger than the others, with golden armor that marked his high rank. He pointed at the humans and laughed, a deep and ugly sound. 300? He shouted in Galactic Common so the humans could understand. You send 300 soldiers against my army. This is an insult. This is a joke. You will all die screaming. Captain Taiho stepped forward. He removed his helmet so the Morak could see his face. His expression was calm and cold. I have heard your kind likes to talk, Taiho said. On Earth, we prefer action. He raised his hand and dropped it. The humans opened fire. The first volley cut through the front line of Morak soldiers. Bodies fell. Screams filled the air. The Morak formation broke apart as soldiers scrambled for cover. They had expected the humans to be weak. They had expected easy kills. They had not expected this. Human weapons were loud. They made a sharp cracking sound that echoed across the battlefield. Each shot was precise. Each shot found a target. The humans did not waste ammunition. They did not spray and pray. They aimed and killed, again and again. Sergeant Minho's heavy gun roared to life. The first burst destroyed an armored vehicle. The second burst killed everyone inside. Minho did not smile. He simply moved to the next target. Lieutenant Yuna led a team around the right side of the battlefield. They moved fast, using the smoke and confusion as cover. They hit the Morak from an unexpected angle, forcing the enemy to split their attention. The Morak tried to fight back. Their energy weapons blazed with deadly light. Plasma bolts flew toward the human positions. Some found their marks. Private Jiho felt heat pass close to his face. A plasma bolt missed him by inches. His heart hammered in his chest. Fear grabbed him like a cold hand. Then training took over. He remembered his instructor's words. Fear is natural. Fear keeps you alive. But you do not let fear control you. You use it. You channel it. Jiho breathed out slowly. He aimed his rifle. He fired. A Morak soldier fell. He fired again. Another fell. The fear was still there, but now it had a partner. Confidence. He could do this. He was trained for this. He was human. Across the battlefield, Captain Taiho pushed forward. His team followed him into the heart of the enemy formation. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, adapting to every change. When the Morak set up a defensive position, the humans went around it. When the Morak tried to surround them, the humans broke through and scattered. The Morak were used to enemies who fought in straight lines. Enemies who held their positions and died where they stood. The humans did not fight that way. They were everywhere and nowhere. They appeared from the smoke, killed, and disappeared again. Corporal Hannah reached a fallen soldier. It was a young man from her unit, hit by a plasma bolt in the chest. The wound was bad, but not fatal. She worked quickly, injecting medicine and sealing the wound with fast-acting bandages. "You will live," she told him. "Can you fight?" The soldier nodded. He was in pain. He could barely breathe. But he picked up his weapon and returned to the battle. This was what the Morak did not understand. This was what made humans different. Pain did not stop them. Wounds did not stop them. Only death stopped a human soldier, and even then, you had to be certain. Many enemies had made the mistake of thinking a human was finished when they were only resting in the Kisham bunker. Commander Roval watched the battle through broken screens and damaged sensors. He could not believe what he was seeing. 300 humans against an army of thousands. The humans were not losing. They were not even struggling. They were winning. How was this possible? An officer whispered beside him. Roval shook his head. He had no answer. He had fought in wars for most of his life. He had studied tactics and strategy. He had faced many enemies. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans did not fight like any species he knew. They did not follow standard formations or predictable patterns. Every soldier seemed to think for themselves while also working perfectly with their team. They communicated without speaking, using hand signals and body movements that Roval could not decode, and they never stopped moving. Never stopped shooting. Never stopped pushing forward. Medic Thela joined Roval at the observation window. She watched a human medic pull a wounded soldier behind cover, treat him in seconds, and send him back into the fight. Her hands trembled. "They are not normal," she said quietly. "No species should be able to do this. No species should want to do this." Roval understood what she meant. The humans were not fighting for territory or resources. They were not fighting for pride or revenge. They were fighting for people they had never met, on a world they had never visited, for an alliance they barely belonged to. Why? What made them do this? The answer came from a strange place. Roval remembered a human saying he had once read a cultural exchange document. It was simple, almost childish. No one is left behind. That was their code. That was their belief. Humans did not abandon their allies. They did not calculate the cost of rescue missions or weigh lives against resources. If someone needed help, they came. If someone was surrounded and dying, they fell from the sky to save them, even if it meant their own death. On the battlefield, Captain Taiho cut through the Morak lines. His team had taken casualties. 2 soldiers were down, being treated by medics. 3 more had minor wounds, but continued fighting. The rest were tired, running low on ammunition, and covered in alien blood. But they were not stopping. Not yet. Not until the mission was complete. "Yuna, status report," Taiho called through his helmet radio. "Right flank secured," she replied. Her voice was steady despite the chaos around her. "Enemy is retreating toward their command vehicles. They are confused and disorganized. Minho? Having fun?" the sergeant responded. Another explosion punctuated his words. "Their armor is not as tough as it looks. Hana? Many wounded, but no deaths so far. These aliens are bad shots." Taiho allowed himself a small smile. "Jiho, how are you holding up?" There was a pause. Then the young private's voice came through, shaky but determined. "I am okay, Captain. I am really okay." "Good, because we are not done yet. Push forward. Do not let them regroup. Show them that humans do not stop." The battle continued. The suns began to set behind the smoke and fire. And 300 humans showed the galaxy what Earth could do. The battle had lasted for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant fighting without pause. 6 hours of death and destruction under the darkening sky of Keth Prime. The twin suns had set behind the mountains. And now only fire lit the battlefield. Warlord Drek stood on the bridge of his command vessel and watched his army fall apart. He could not understand it. He had fought hundreds of battles. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had crushed armies 10 times the size of this tiny human force. But now his soldiers were running. His officers were dying. His perfect siege was crumbling. "Explain this to me," Drek growled at his advisors. His claws scraped against the metal floor. His eyes burned with rage and something he had not felt in many years. Fear. How are 300 aliens defeating my army? His chief advisor bowed low. "Warlord, we have analyzed their tactics. We have studied their movements. We have no explanation." "No explanation?" Drek's voice rose to a roar. "Find one. Are they using drugs? Are they machines? Are they some kind of demons? They appear to be organic life forms, Warlord. Their blood is red. They bleed when we hit them. They feel pain." The advisor paused, searching for words. "But they do not stop. They take wounds that would kill any Morak soldier, and they continue fighting. They do not sleep. They do not rest. They just keep coming." Drek turned to the tactical display. Red markers covered the screen, but they were scattered and disorganized. His forces had lost all formation. Soldiers fought in small groups or alone, with no coordination. The humans, those tiny blue dots, moved through them like water through sand. "Pull back the ground forces," Drek ordered. "Bomb the area from orbit. Kill everything, including our own soldiers if necessary. I will not lose this battle to a handful of eggs. Warlord, the Keshan bunker is within the blast zone. High Command wants the enemy commander taken alive, or I do not care what High Command wants." Drek slammed his fist on the console. "Burn it all, now!" On the ground, Captain Taiho heard the warning through his helmet sensors. Energy signatures were building in the orbiting Morak vessels. The enemy was preparing for an orbital strike, a bombardment that would kill everything within kilometers. "All units, this is Captain Taiho," he broadcast to his soldiers. "The enemy is preparing to bomb the battlefield. We have approximately 10 minutes. New objective: take out the enemy command center before they can fire. Lieutenant Yuna's voice came through the radio. "Captain, the command center is heavily defended. We will take heavy casualties." "I know," Taiho replied. "But if we do not stop them, everyone dies. Keshan and human alike. That is not acceptable." There was silence on the radio. Then Yuna spoke again. "Understood. Moving to assault position." Sergeant Minho checked his ammunition. He was running low. His heavy gun had destroyed 12 enemy vehicles, but now he was down to his last few rounds. He looked at the enemy command center in the distance. It was a massive mobile fortress on tracks, surrounded by the last of the Moraka Lake Guard. "That is a lot of enemies," he said quietly. Private Jiho crouched beside him. The young soldier was covered in dirt and blood, some of it his own. He had been wounded twice during the battle, but Corporal Hana had patched him up each time. Now he held his rifle with steady hands. The fear was still there, but it had become familiar. Almost comfortable. "Sergeant, are we going to make it?" Jiho asked. Minho considered the question. He was an honest man who did not like to give false hope. "I do not know, Private, but we are going to try." "That is what soldiers do." Jiho nodded. That was enough. In the Keshan bunker, Commander Roval made a decision. He had watched the humans fight for hours. He had watched them bleed and struggle and refuse to give up. He had watched them save his people without asking for anything in return. He could not let them die alone. All soldiers who can still fight. "Gather your weapons," Roval announced through the bunker's communication system. "We are joining the assault." His officers looked at him with surprise. "Commander, our forces are exhausted. We have barely 800 soldiers left. Most are wounded. We cannot sit here and watch others die for us," Roval interrupted. His voice was hard. "The humans came when no one else would. They fell from the sky into certain death because we called for help. I will not dishonor their sacrifice by hiding in a bunker." Medic Thela stepped forward. "I will come too. The human medic has been working alone for hours. She will need help." Roval looked at her and nodded. "Then let us go." The Keshan soldiers emerged from their bunker. They were tired and wounded. Their weapons were nearly empty. Their bodies ached with exhaustion and pain. But they marched forward, toward the sound of battle, toward the humans who had come to save them. Captain Taiho saw them coming. 800 Keshan soldiers, moving in formation despite their wounds. They looked like ghosts rising from the dead. But they were alive. And they were fighting. "Commander Roval," Taiho called through the open channel. "It is good to see you." Roval's voice came back, tired but strong. "We could not let you have all the fun, Captain." "What is the plan?" Taiho smiled inside his helmet. "The enemy command center is preparing an orbital strike. We need to reach it and shut it down. My soldiers will lead the assault. Can your forces cover our flanks?" "We can do more than that," Roval replied. "My people know this terrain. We know their weaknesses. Let us fight together." For the first time in this long battle, humans and Keshan moved as one. They advanced across the burning battlefield toward the Morak Command Center. Human soldiers took the front, their weapons cutting through the enemy defenses. Keshan soldiers protected the sides, using their knowledge of the land to find hidden paths and weak points. Lieutenant Yuna led her team in a flanking move around the left side of the command center. She had studied Morak psychology. She knew they valued strength and dominance above all else. They would focus on the main assault and underestimate the side. Attack. She was right. Her team reached the rear of the command center without being seen. They planted explosives on the main engines and the weapon systems. When the charges went off, the massive vehicle shuddered and groaned. Inside the command center, Warlord Drek felt the explosion. Warning lights flashed across his bridge. His officers shouted reports of damage and system failures. We are under attack from multiple directions. The orbital weapons are offline. Ground forces are retreating. Drek roared with fury. He grabbed his personal weapon, a massive blade that had killed hundreds of enemies. He would not die on the bridge of a failing ship. He would die in battle, like a true warrior. He marched toward the exit, but the door opened before he reached it. A human woman stood in the doorway. She was small, barely reaching his chest. Her armor was damaged and burned. Her face was dirty with smoke and blood, but her eyes were calm, cold, unafraid. "Warlord Drek," Lieutenant Yuna said, "your siege is over." Drek laughed. "You think you can stop me, little creature? I have killed thousands. I have conquered worlds. You are nothing." Yuna did not move. "Your fleet is falling back. Your army is broken. Your command center is disabled. In 5 minutes, Earth reinforcements will arrive in orbit. It is finished." Drek raised his blade. "Then I will take you with me." He charged at her, his massive body moving with surprising speed. His blade swung toward her head. Yuna sidestepped. The blade missed her by inches. She fired her weapon into his knee. Drek stumbled but did not fall. He swung again. She dodged again. She fired again. The fight lasted less than a minute. Drek was bigger, stronger, and more experienced. But Yuna was faster, smarter, and calm. She did not try to match his strength. She simply stayed out of reach and wore him down. Finally, Drek collapsed to his knees. His body was wounded in a dozen places. His eyes still burned with hatred. "You think this ends anything?" He growled. "The Dominion will send more forces. Millions of soldiers. You will all die." Yuna looked at him without expression. "Then send them? Earth has billions." Drek stared at her. For the first time, true fear appeared in his eyes. He had not considered that. He had not imagined that the humans could have more soldiers than he had seen today. The thought of billions of these creatures, all fighting with the same determination and skill, was terrifying. "Take him prisoner," Yuna called to her team. "The war is not over, but this battle is won." Outside, the Morak forces were surrendering. Without their warlord, without their command center, without hope of orbital support, they had nothing left. Human and Kishan soldiers stood together and watched the enemy lay down their weapons. Captain Taiho found Commander Roval in the middle of the battlefield. Both commanders were wounded and exhausted. Both were smiling. "Thank you," Roval said. "You saved my people. I will never forget this." Taiho shook his head. "That is what allies do. We look out for each other. No one gets left behind." Roval looked at the human soldiers around him. They were sitting down now, resting for the first time in hours. Medics moved between them, treating wounds and handing out water. Despite everything they had been through, many were laughing and joking with each other. "You are strange creatures," Roval admitted. "I do not fully understand you." "Neither do we sometimes," Taiho replied. "But that is what makes life interesting." Above them, the first of Earth's reinforcement ships appeared in the sky. More humans were coming. More help was arriving. 3 days had passed since the battle. Kef Prime was still covered in smoke and debris, but life was slowly returning to normal. The twin suns rose over the mountains, casting golden light across the scarred landscape. Somewhere in the distance, birds began to sing again. Commander Roval walked through what remained of the battlefield. Broken vehicles and destroyed weapons littered the ground. The bodies had been removed, both Keshin and Morak, but dark stains still marked the places where soldiers had fallen. It would take many cycles before this land healed. Beside him walked Captain Taiho. The human had removed his armor for the first time since arriving on the planet. Without it, He looked smaller, more fragile. Just a man made of flesh and bone, like any other creature in the galaxy. But Rovell knew better now. He knew that the body was only part of what made a human dangerous. The real weapon was inside. The spirit. The will. The refusal to accept defeat. "Your ships have been arriving all morning," Rovell said, looking up at the sky. Earth vessels hung in orbit, their lights visible even in daylight. "How many soldiers did you bring?" "The 77th was just the first wave," Taiho replied. "We have 4 more divisions deploying now. Approximately 50,000 soldiers in total. More will come if needed." Rovell stopped walking. 50,000. When the battle began, he had thought 300 was a miracle. Now there were 50,000. The numbers were impossible to understand. Why? Rovell asked. The question had been burning in his mind since the battle ended. "Why did you come? Your species is new to this region of space. The Keshan Alliance has never helped Earth. We have barely spoken to each other before this war. You owed us nothing." Taiho was quiet for a moment. He bent down and picked up a piece of broken metal from the ground, turning it over in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "On Earth, we have a long history of war. Longer than most species can imagine. We have fought each other for land, for resources, for ideas, for pride. Millions of our own kind have died in our conflicts. We are not proud of this history, but we learned from it." He dropped the metal and looked at Rovell directly. "We learned that the only way to survive is together. When one group is attacked, others must help. When one city falls, others must fight for it. Because if we stand alone, we die alone. And if we let others die alone, we become something worse than our enemies." Rovell tried to understand. His species valued honor and duty, but they also valued logic. They calculated costs and benefits. They did not throw soldiers into hopeless battles for strangers. "But the cost," Rovell said. "Your soldiers died here. Some of them will never return to their families. Was it worth it?" Taiho's expression changed. It became harder, colder. "My soldiers knew the risks. They volunteered for this mission. Every single one of them. Because on Earth, we believe that some things are worth dying for. Protecting the innocent is worth dying for. Standing against evil is worth dying for. Being human means accepting that sometimes you must sacrifice yourself so others can live." He paused and looked at the sky again. "Besides, we did not lose as many as we could have. Corporal Hana tells me that all our wounded will survive. And your medic, Thela, saved at least 30 of my soldiers with her help. The cost was high, but it could have been higher." Rovell thought about Thela. She had worked beside the human medics for 3 days without rest. She had learned new techniques from them and taught them about Keshan biology. When he last saw her, she had been sleeping in the medical tent, surrounded by patients both human and Keshan. "She is changed," Rovell said. "Since the battle. She looks at humans differently now. She looks at everything differently." "War does that to people," Taiho agreed. "It shows you what you are made of, and what others are made of." They continued walking through the battlefield until they reached a ridge overlooking the valley. From here, they could see the entire scope of destruction, but they could also see the recovery efforts. Human engineers were helping Keshan workers repair damaged buildings. Human medical ships floated above the cities, treating civilians who had been caught in the siege. Human and Keshan soldiers worked side by side to clear debris and rebuild roads. "What happens now?" Rovell asked. "The Marik Dominion will not forget this defeat. They will send more forces. Warlord Drek warned us of this before we took him prisoner." Taiho nodded. "He is right. The Dominion will respond. But they will not find an easy victory this time. Earth is preparing for a full alliance with the Keshan. We are deploying fleets across this sector. We are sharing weapons and technology. An alliance, Rovell repeated. The word felt strange on his tongue. His people had never had a true ally before. They had trade partners and neutral contacts, but never someone who would fight and die beside them. Not just between soldiers, Taiho continued. Between peoples. Our governments are already talking. They want to establish permanent embassies, joint training programs, cultural exchanges. They want to build something that will last beyond this war. Rovell thought about this. His people were proud. They valued independence and self-reliance. Accepting help had been difficult. Accepting partnership would be even harder. But then he remembered the battle. He remembered watching human soldiers fall from the sky. He remembered fighting beside them against impossible odds. He remembered the way they had treated his wounded soldiers with the same care they showed their own. Perhaps, Rovell said slowly, perhaps it is time for my people to learn new ways. Perhaps independence is not as valuable as connection. Taiho smiled for the first time since their walk began. That is a very human thing to say, Commander. Then maybe I am learning already. In the medical camp, Corporal Hana was finishing her rounds. She had treated hundreds of patients in the past 3 days. Human soldiers with burns and broken bones. Kashan soldiers with wounds she had never seen before. Civilians who had been caught in explosions were trapped under rubble. She was exhausted. Her body ached. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. But she kept working because there was always one more patient who needed help. Private Jiho found her beside a sleeping Kashan child. The child had been injured when a building collapsed. Hannah had operated for 6 hours to save her life. She will recover, Hana said without looking up. Young ones heal fast, especially on this planet. Jiho sat down beside her. He was also tired, but there was a new light in his eyes. The light of someone who had survived the impossible. Corporal, can I ask you something? Hannah finally looked at him. Of course. Before the battle, I was afraid. Terrified, actually. I thought I was going to die. I thought everyone was going to die. He paused, searching for words. But during the battle, the fear went away. I just did what I needed to do. I fought. I helped my team. I even saved a few people, I think. He looked at his hands, turning them over like they belonged to someone else. Is that what it means to be a soldier? To do the right thing even when you are scared? Hannah smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. That is exactly what it means. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting despite the fear. And you showed plenty of courage, Private. Jiho nodded slowly. Then he looked at the sleeping child and back at Hana. I think I understand now. Why we do this. Why we fight. It is not about glory or winning. It is about them. He gestured at the patients around them. It is about making sure they have a chance to live. Now you sound like a veteran, Hana said, got in orbit above the planet. General Vorn of Keshan High Command arrived with the fleet he had originally promised. He was too late for the battle, but just in time to see the aftermath. He stood on the observation deck of his flagship and stared at the Earth vessels surrounding him. He had heard reports of the battle. He had read the tactical analyses. He had seen the casualty numbers on both sides. But seeing the human ships with his own eyes made it real in a way that numbers could not. They are smaller than I expected, he said to an aide beside him. They're ships, I mean. Our vessels are twice their size. Yes, General, the aide replied. But they carry more soldiers per ship. And their soldiers are different. Varn remembered the stories he'd dismissed as exaggeration. Persistence predators. Death world survivors. Creatures who hunted their prey to exhaustion and healed from wounds that would kill other species. I thought those stories were myths, he admitted. So did everyone, General. Until now. Warren watched a human shuttle descend toward the planet. It carried more engineers, more medics, more soldiers. The humans were not leaving. They were building. They were settling in. They were preparing for a long war. What kind of species sacrifices themselves for strangers? Warren asked. It was a question he did not expect an answer to, but his aide responded anyway. The kind that believes no one should face darkness alone. Warren thought about those words for a long time, on the surface of Keth Prime. As the second sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Captain Taiho stood at the edge of the ridge, alone. Lieutenant Yuna found him there, staring at the horizon where stars were beginning to appear. The troops are resting, she reported. Morale is high. They are proud of what we did here. They should be, Taiho replied. They performed beyond expectations. Yuna stood beside him and followed his gaze to the stars.